When you look at the running back position, Georgia has the upper hand when compared to Clemson University.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Clemson podcast. My name is John Bivens. I am your host here for this episode. We are a credentialed media member through Clemson University with football, baseball, and basketball. You can follow us over on X at I am John Bivens. Thanks so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast at and over on YouTube. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. After this episode, make sure you go check out one of the other podcasts with Locked On Podcasts, like the Locked On ACC show. But here on Clemson, you're getting three things. You're getting all sports, all passion, all of the time. Today is Tuesday, August 20th. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff today, such as the running back matchups between Clemson and Georgia, talking about this crazy Atlanta environment that they'll be playing in, and then Bleacher Report put out their ACC preview, and let me tell you, they're pretty favorable on Clemson, which is a surprise. We're grateful for all of our sponsors that make this show possible. For a full list of those, make sure you check out our episode notes. Overall, Georgia has the upper hand and has the advantage when it comes to the running back position. We're in the middle of this series. We kicked it off yesterday when we looked at the quarterback position. What we do is, in order for getting excited for this game, obviously this Clemson-Georgia game is one of the hottest games that people are talking about right now as we're getting closer and closer to the kickoff of college football. With that series and with that game getting in mind, we're starting the series where we look at different positional groups for these two teams. We looked at the quarterback room. Today we're looking at running back room. We'll look at wide receivers. We'll look at defensive groups. We'll look at these positional groups, and we're just diving in, seeing who has the advantage. When it comes to these schools, what school has the advantage at the different styles, different places for the team? Today we're looking at the running back room, and as much as it hates me to say this, Georgia has the advantage. And as a Clemson fan, believe me, that hurts me to say, because I look at Phil Mafah and I think he is one of the best running backs in the nation. I think the reason he's slept on, and he is slept on, the reason he is underestimated, he's a sleeper, so to say, I think the reason for that is because simply he was behind Will Shipley last year. People are looking at Will Shipley, who carried this team, and he didn't have a great year, but Phil Mafah had a great year, almost 1,000 yards last year. Might have been it was really close if he wasn't over as a backup. I think Phil Mafah is going to be great as the sole back there. He's going to see a lot of great things. He's going to see a great performance. He's going to lead this team. But in order for that to happen, we've got to see him. Right? He's going to be underestimated. People aren't going to see his true potential, his true talent until the season starts, right? Until the season actually happens. So when we're doing this series, we can't look at where the team is going to be. We can't look at where the running back room is going to be at the end of the season, where we think it's going to be. We have to look at where it is right now. And when we do that, Georgia's running back room is one of the best in the nation. Here's Georgia's running back room. It is a familiar name at the running back position, but it is a transfer his first year with Georgia. Trevor Etienne, the little brother of Travis Etienne from Clemson. But they also have sophomore Roderick Robertson, redshirt sophomore Branson Robinson, and then there's redshirt junior Cash Jones as a backup there as well. They've got a great room. Trevor Etienne might be the best back in the nation. He is so great. He's talented. He can move. He's transferred from Florida, and at Florida he played well. Little underestimated or a little underappreciated there, just with a not great offensive line. But he's a great running back. He came in. We're using recruits for this recruiting profile as we dive into these two schools. We're using these from 24/7 Sports just so it is fair and accurate across both of them. He came into Florida when he entered Florida as a 4-star recruit, 93 overall score there. He's from Louisiana there, as most Clemsons understand. That's where Travis Etienne was from as well. But he came in 35th overall, third running back. And then here's his scouting report that was put out, what people said about him a lot. The biggest things were this. They said that he could move. He's got versatility. He has the ability to be shifty, move inside and outside of the line. If he's outside run or inside run, he can make a difference. He's got quick acceleration, great open field moves, has the ability to play as a receiver as well, catching the ball out of the backfield, making a difference in the pass game. Overall, Trevor Etienne is amazing. He's very talented. A lot of Clemson fans remember when Clemson was trying to get him. He was one of their finalists, and I remember when he chose Florida, I was so bummed. I really thought we were going to have more years of the Etienne experience. I thought that would have been special, but it didn't happen. Instead, he transferred over to Georgia, and now he's a transfer junior for Georgia. Probably will be there for 2 years. He's special. He is so talented. There is no doubts. When Phil Mafah, I think he's one of the best in the league. There's doubts there. Trevor Etienne, no matter how you feel about Georgia, everyone knows he's one of the best running backs in the nation. They're stacked. Now, I don't think that Clemson is way far behind. Right now, where they are, I think they're still high up there because Phil Mafah, like we talked about, had an excellent season last year. Phil Mafah he played really, really well. He was a backup to Will Shipley. They split the carries a little bit, but Will Shipley mainly got majority of the starts. He got majority of the downs, that kind of aspect. But last year he had played in 13 games, only started 5 of those. A lot of those were injuries. He ended up with 965 yards, almost 1,000 yards as a backup, only starting 5 games. Had 13 touchdowns, as long as was 49. He averaged 13.8 attempts, about 75 yards per game. That's good stats. Much improved from 2022, where he only started 1 game, 14 appearances, still had over 500 yards. His freshman year, he started 1 game, 9 games, played 292 yards with 3 touchdowns. So overall, he's good. They're very different backs. Trevor Etienne has that smaller frame, smaller build, more shifty, more elusive back. Phil Mafah can play as that, but he's more of a hybrid, almost a power back with some elusive back skills. So it's interesting. It's going to be very interesting when these two running backs face off. They've both got a great range. They've both got a great ability, great skill. You can't compare where they're going to be, right? You can't compare where we think they're going to be or their potential or anything like that. You have to compare where they are right now. Where they are right now is Trevor is a little bit better. Last year at Florida, he didn't have the stats that Phil Mafah had. So that's a big thing that people will say, and that's my argument why Phil Mafah is better. I believe Phil Mafah is better. I think you got to give the advantage to Georgia just overall as a group. But last year at Florida, he had 131 carries for 750 yards, 8 touchdowns. But they had a little bit more shared back as well. He wasn't the only one there. I think that's why he transferred, because he wasn't getting the attention that he deserved, the attention that he should truly get. Wasn't getting all the shares. But he's a great back. Phil Mafah had better stats last year. Overall, talent-wise, I think Clemson might have that. As we talked about, Trevor Etienne was the 35th in the nation, 93 overall score. Phil Mafah came in as 179th in the nation, the 92 overall score. Phil Mafah was in the 2021 class. Trevor Etienne was very similar, but he's a great back, really good back. Personal opinion, I think these rooms are identical. I think these running back rooms are identical with backups. Both have good backups. We talked about some of Georgia's backups. Clemson has great ones. They got Keith Adams. He's a redshirt sophomore. Jay Haynes is a redshirt freshman. Jarvis Green, redshirt freshman. Even Easy E, who is incredibly fast as a true freshman. You've got great plays. Across the board, if you have to label it, I think quarterback matchup, as we talked about yesterday, is Georgia's probably up here. Cade Klubnik's right here, right? Running backs today, I would say Trevor Etienne's up here, and Phil Mafah. I say here, he's probably putting right there. So overall, you got to give the advantage to Georgia when it comes to the running back room. That hurts to say for sure, but that's where it is right now. At the beginning of the season, the advantage goes to Georgia in the running back room. We're going to keep this segment going, keep this series going in next episode as we dive into the wide receiver rooms, who has the advantage there. But we'll really only get the answers to these when the two schools face off. We won't know who's going to be better truly until we see what happens when they face each other on August 31st. And when they face each other, you better believe that stadium is going to be crazy. It's summertime, and I don't know about y'all, but what that means for me is it is barbecue season. My grill has been going, my smoker has been flaming, the meats have been flying off the grill, and so it's time for you to stock up on all of your grilling favorites and earn cash back on every purchase when you use Ibotta. That way you don't have to choose between burgers or hot dogs. You can get both. Fire up that grill. Get those meats going. Ibotta is a free app that lets you get cash back every time you shop. Earn on the hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies to toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip or that flight that you've been eyeing or even that fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or even gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is all yours. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and so much more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Welcome back to the Locked On Clemson Football Podcast. Hey, college football is back, and the Locked On College Football Podcast kicks off the action with a live season preview at 7 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, August 20th on the Locked On College 24/7 streaming YouTube channel. This four-part series covers each of the four major conferences with discussion on which ACC, Big 10, Big 12, and SEC teams have a shot at the expanded college football playoffs. We're going to talk about Clemson a lot in the ACC segment. Be sure to check out this special streaming on Locked On College's 24/7 YouTube channel or on Amazon Fire TV, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for joining us here for the Locked On Clemson Podcast. Clemson and Georgia are going to face off at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and that whole place will be the wildest environment that either school plays in all year. Look, Clemson is an amazing stadium. Clemson has crazy good vibes, crazy fans, wild environment. It's in my opinion, the best, but by far one of the best places to play, places to experience in college football. If you've never been to a Clemson football game, go to one. They're crazy. Georgia is right up there. They've got a great environment as well. They've got a great home field. They've got a great home stadium. It's one of the best in the nation as well. It's not as good as Clemson, let's just be real, but it is really, really wild. When these two schools face off, when they get together and when they play each other in Atlanta, it's going to be wild. That stadium is going to be bumping. Those schools, those fans, those bands are going to be wild. That environment is going to be crazy. There's a couple reasons why. Number one, anytime you get two top 15 schools play opening the season, it's electric. Georgia's obviously 1, Clemson's 14. When these two schools face off, two top 15 schools face off to face each other to kick off the season, that it's going to be wild. The environment, the buildup is already going to be there. Number two is it's a rivalry game as well. I know a lot of modern day fans don't really realize the level of this rivalry. These two schools used to face each other every single year. They don't play as often now, but it's still a heated rivalry. Like, these two schools don't like each other very much, especially the fans. I mean, they're only 75 miles apart. They're in two states, South Carolina, Georgia, that naturally has a tendency not to like one another. But it's a rivalry. Top 15 matchup and a rivalry. It's going to be wild. It's also two of the loudest fan bases in college football. Depending on where you look, Stadium Talk has Georgia as the 20th loudest stadium. Clemson is the third. Other sources have Georgia 11th and Clemson 8th. Others have both in the top 7. No matter where you look, these are two of the loudest stadiums when they play against each other. And now they're both bringing in their fans, bringing in their teams, because they're playing in Atlanta. That's a 2.5-hour drive from Clemson, 2.5-hour drive from Clemson, an hour and a half from Georgia. That's not far. They're bringing in their fans into an indoor NFL stadium, which is going to be loud. That stadium is going to be crazy. It's going to be one of the wildest environments you've experienced. So, two top 15 schools facing off. The rivalry is there, and it's two of the loudest for college fan bases in college football, but it gets bigger than that. I think, honestly, both bands are going to play. They play a huge part of what these schools do. one of the best parts of college football is the bands, is the environment that the fans, the bands, the cheerleaders, they bring into it, because it just creates this vibe. It creates this stadium. It creates this environment energy that allows people to get more involved in the game, which gets the players more pumped up, more involved, which just creates this electric cycle. These two schools have some of the best traditions in the sport. When it comes to the band, Clemson has the Tiger Ride, or the Tiger Rag. Everyone knows it. CLEMSO. Right? Like, everybody knows that. It's huge. It plays great. The band goes on. When the music starts, as soon as it hits, the fans are on their feet. They're jumping. They're getting involved. They're playing. It's electric. Georgia also has a really, I would say annoying, but a really known fight song called Glory, Glory. It's playing. Both bands are going to show up, and both bands are going to be playing their fight songs at different moments. It happens. That's what goes on. They play it all the time. Both teams better get prepared for this, because they are going to have an active part next weekend. These bands are going to play an active part and an active role in what these two schools and how these teams are going to play. And the teams have already started preparing for this. Clemson has started playing with Georgia's fight song on loop during part of the practices. On Tuesday, the Clemson players practice where Dabo Swinney had a 20-minute long loop of Glory, Glory, Georgia's fight song playing during the entire special teams practice. He just nonstop went over and over and over and over and over again. And when they're asked why, he was like, look, that's going to happen. They're going to have to face this. They might as well get used to it. They did it. They talked about that. He talked about different things of how they need to impact it. A lot of times it'll happen after a touchdown, so you'll have to play special teams with that. It'll happen after big moments. It'll happen at random parts during the game. You've got to get accustomed to it. Different players talked about it. Some of our defensive players were like, yeah, it's a real thing we're going to have to deal with, so let's just get focused on it. Let's get used to it. Christopher, our backup quarterback, came in and was like, yeah, look, it's real. It's annoying. It's a thing that happens, so we've just got to make sure we're used to it, we're accustomed to it, and we know how to handle it when we hear that song 40 times when the game starts. I paraphrase that pretty liberally, but that's what they were talking about. They're getting prepared for this. Clemson's preparing for it. I'm sure Georgia's preparing for it. Kirby Smart was asked about what this rivalry is going to happen. He's like, look, a biggest part of this rivalry is the fans don't like each other. And when that happens and all the fans are crowded in that stadium, it's going to be wild. With all these factors, with everything we're talking about, these two schools better get ready for a wild environment as they face off. As excited as we are about this kickoff, though, we're stoked for the entire season. And we love to look ahead at what Clemson will do. Bleacher Report put out their ACC preview, and they, for once, had a very favorable opinion when it came to the Clemson Tigers.
Jarvis Davis here for FanDuel. You heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So guess what? I'm about to tell you a little bit more. We got a little something just for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. It doesn't matter if you're a fan of the Atlanta Falcons, the Carolina Panthers, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Las Vegas Raiders. It doesn't matter, because guess what? With a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. Yes, every regular season out-of-market game. That is so dope. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon, and make sure you download America's #1 sportsbook.
Clemson and FSU seem destined to play each other by the media to face each other in the ACC championship game. Look, these two schools, everywhere you look, almost every single media outlet is saying it's going to be Clemson, it's going to be FSU facing each other in the ACC championship game. That's what's going to happen. Well, these two schools, everywhere you look, it seems like that's what's going to be predicted. That's what's destined to happen, is this matchup between these powerhouses. Really, the only big media source that I'm seeing not have these two face off are other Locked On podcasts, which have Clemson and Miami or NC State. Everywhere else seems like it has Clemson versus FSU. Bleacher Report recently put out their ACC preview where they go through so many different factors and so many different things, and they had some really great stuff to say about Clemson, and they had them favored for this matchup. So let's go through and look at those. We want to talk about what all they brought forth. They brought forth a lot of things. Some of the things they brought forth were the best players, and Clemson had some players listed here. They talked about the best players in the ACC. Really, were focused on the three best quarterbacks. They had DJU from FSU, from Oregon State, and from Clemson. They had Miami with Cam Ward. And among all the other quarterbacks, they listed Cade Klubnik. And they talked about he didn't perform at star level, but they really feel like he's going to have a big impact on this ACC race with Clemson. So they mentioned him there. Running backs, of course, they talked about Omarion Hampton from North Carolina and Cal's Jaden Ott. NC State, they talked about their wide receiver, Kevin Concepcion. Miami's Xavier Restrepo. Stanford, Alec A. Minor. Florida State, they talked about them. When it came to some defensive line with Patrick Payton or Ashton Gillette, Reuben Bain Jr., Kamen Rucker, and then, of course, talked about Peter Woods, TJ Parker from Clemson. And then the best linebacker, of course, was Barrett Carter. That's what they put out there. When it came to their top storylines, their biggest one they talked about was Clemson or FSU. I'm going to read this quote. This is from Bleacher Report. It says this: Clemson has dominated the conference lately, winning 7 ACC championships in the last 10 years. Florida State, which had been the league powerhouse before Clemson's rise, put together an unbeaten regular season and earned all ACC or an ACC title in 2023. That duo opens the campaign as co-favorites, even as Clemson is aiming to rebound from a disappointing year. Since the ACC abandoned divisions last year, it could be Clemson versus FSU's clash for the crown. They're talking about it. These two are destined to face each other. Everybody is saying it. Talked about their top challengers. They went through and they tiered the division. Tier 1, Clemson, FSU. They talked about how it's going to be them. If it doesn't belong to them, it's going to be crazy. They call them, quote for quote, behemoths when it comes to this conference. Tier 2, they had Miami, NC State, Louisville, Virginia Tech, and SMU. Tier 3, they had the surprise section. They put Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and Syracuse. That's people that it could happen and surprise everybody. Everybody else was below them. Coaches on the hot seat, they put Dabo Swinney. I'm just kidding. No, they didn't. They did not have Dabo. They had Justin Wilcox over with Cal. They had Pat Narduzzi from Pitt, and then they had Tony Elliott from Virginia. Please don't let Tony get fired. I love that guy. Then they had Miami's Mario Cristobal, saying that he's up there if they're not able to produce with this team. Best games of the season. They listed 12 games, and Clemson appeared in almost half of them. They had 3 different ones. The best non-conference games, they had Florida State and Notre Dame to end the season. They had Memphis and Florida State, NC State and Tennessee. And then they had, of course, the biggest game of the season for ACC non-conference was Clemson versus Georgia in Atlanta. That crazy game that's going to happen. Top conference matchups, Clemson appeared in 3 of these 4. In the top conference matchups of Clemson or of the ACC, they have NC State at Clemson. They have Clemson at Florida State. They have Florida State at Miami, and then they have Clemson at Virginia Tech. A lot going to happen there, right? A lot of Clemson there. Clemson has their hands full when it comes to the ACC schedule. Then they have best of the rest, which are the other games not according to those. They have Virginia Tech, Miami, Florida State, SMU, Miami at Louisville. They have that Louisville versus Clemson. Saying that's going to be a really big game, really important game. And then the state rivalry of NC State and North Carolina. They have the best offenses. Clemson didn't make the list there. The best offense they put was Miami. And then the best defense, by far, they had Clemson. No surprise there. Clemson, top 10 defense last season, top 10 defense every season. Sophomore group is loaded this year. Peter Woods, TJ Parker. They've got some Barrett Carter, the senior, who's going to be leading this team drastically. We are going to need a little bit of improvement from secondary as we lost Nate Wiggins and Sheridan Jones and Andrew Makuba. But we have a top 5 secondary in the ACC almost every single year. Expectations are high. They should do well here. The projected order of finish. Here's how they predicted to order it. I will say they forgot one, but they went through. They did Virginia, Boston College, Stanford, Wake Forest, Pitt, Duke, Syracuse, Cal, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Louisville, SMU, Virginia Tech. This is from bottom up. Final 4, they have Miami, NC State finishing 3rd. They have Florida State at 2nd, and they are predicting Clemson to take them the ACC regular season matchup. Then they went through and they projected the title game. They didn't predict who was going to win it. They just guessed who was going to be in the title game. And no surprise, they put Clemson versus FSU. Bleacher Report is not one that usually has a lot of favorable things to say about Clemson. But in this one, they have a lot of great things. They're expecting Clemson to be great. They're expecting Cade to truly make this massive difference. They're putting him up there. They said this about this matchup. They said Clemson had a 7-game winning streak in this series, but Florida State snapped its skid in 23. There may be 2 matchups in 2024. The one contest we know, Clemson heads to Tallahassee for a clash in October. The winner of that meeting will likely claim the title of ACC favorite as the second half of the season approaches. The second would arrive with the ACC title and trip to the college football playoff at stake. Miami is talented. North Carolina State has a favorable schedule. Virginia slate is similar. If either one upsets Clemson and Miami and wins at home against FSU, throw this prediction directly into the technological trash that would cause chaos causing combo. Entering 2024 season, Clemson and FSU stand out as the class of ACC. They're favorable, these two teams, and they're predicting Clemson over FSU, which you don't see a lot. There's been a lot of people predict Clemson, FSU, and ACC champion. Not a lot saying Clemson is going to be number 1 in the conference. That does happen a lot. Most people are putting them split or FSU taking the lead. It's exciting. What it comes down to is this. It feels like this matchup of Clemson versus FSU is, in the words of Thanos, inevitable. It's going to happen. They're going to face each other twice, according to this. I agree. I think we're going to go to Tallahassee. I think we'll win that game. Shocker. I think we'll upset the world, win that game. And then I think they're going to face off in the ACC championship game. As they talked about, the biggest things that would prevent that would be Miami beating Florida State at home, and then either North Carolina State or Virginia Tech beating Clemson. State plays at Clemson. Virginia Tech plays at home against us. So those two could be changes to those, but it's inevitable. It's destiny. These two schools are going to face each other. It's going to happen. Clemson is going to win the ACC championship. Mark it down. I'm saying it right now. We're going to win coming first in the regular season and win the championship, beating Florida State twice this season. I'm putting it down there. That's my hopes. That's what I think is going to happen. But with all that being said, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Clemson podcast. Thanks for making Clemson your first listen every day. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McCaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't need to search. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Later this week, we're going to keep this conversation going, getting ready for the Georgia game. But we also want to make sure you are part of our Locked On Clemson Insider program. That is a great program where you can have one-on-one chats with us, access to bonus material and bonus questions, and mailbag episode videos. So make sure you join that for a free trial for 14 days. Text Clemson to 864-252-1907. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's topic. Shoot us a DM, drop a comment, hit us up on the Locked On Clemson Insider program. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you haven't, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast, wherever you get your podcast at, or over on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. That way, every day we can be your first listen here on the Locked On Clemson podcast. Make sure to check out one of the other 200-plus episodes from Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We can't wait to see you in tomorrow's episode. Until then, keep that Tiger pride alive and roaring. And as always, go Tigers.